Welcome in, y'all. Timeshare Clarence. Again, first and foremost, I want to thank God for waking me up this morning, blessing me with another day and another opportunity to work towards becoming the man I desire to be. This video right here, I want to get back to the gratitude series, and I want to focus on my dad and the impact he's had and continues to have, or at least through me and my siblings. And there's a lot of things that I understand. The good doesn't erase the bad, but I'm starting to be more mindful of how much good it was, even if I didn't realize it when I was younger. My dad contributed a lot to teaching me the things that I needed to know to be successful, to shaping my opinion of what not only a good man was, but what a good father is, and just preparing me for the challenges that I've dealt with and continue to deal with in life. And the more that I go through it, the more I realize that I get through it a lot because of the preparation and the things that my dad instilled in me. But it's two sides of it, and both of them matter. So for my part, I don't want to have as much negative with my kids, but I don't want to neglect the positive stuff. So I felt like with my dad, it's a lot of it may be more negative than positive, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a lot of positive. But that inspires me and pushes me to try to at least ensure that with the time I have, that I contribute more positive than negative, and also accept that no matter how much positive you contribute, it's always going to be something that's perceived as negative to your kids. So I know it's some negative I've contributed in the lives of my kids, and I hope to not only balance it out, but surpass the negative with the positive in the present and future. So with that being said, I was thinking about kind of where everything started with the disappointment from my dad. So two things. First off, I think more than anybody else, my dad kind of established or allowed me to establish my identity as, different than everybody else from the standpoint I'm a junior. And that was significant, and that meant something to me, and it meant something to him. And he did treat me different. Everybody talk about how, my mama babied me, and I'm my mama baby, and I'm always be my mama baby, and it is what it is. But my dad clearly expressed to me from a very early age that he treated me differently, and he had different expectations for me, and he really saw me as, the person to carry on his legacy. So, and that I was important enough to, at least he verbalized this. And in one sense it was demonstrated, and then in another it wasn't. So I got two scenarios. And I think I mentioned one before, and I've always looked at it kind of like it was really messed up. I remember one day my dad was taking a nap on the couch, and I was young. I don't know how young I was, old enough to understand, but young. And this was, Micah's 5. I was younger than Micah. So, or maybe right around Micah's age. So I was probably around 5. And my dad was taking a nap on the living room couch, and I woke him up. And I don't know whatever my dad's military experience was, but I know I identified my dad as far as career as a prison guard. It was a point in time where I know he worked at a pizza joint or whatever. I don't even remember whether it was Pizza Hut or Domino's. I just remember he worked at a pizza place for a period of time, part-time. But what I saw my dad as was a correctional officer, a prison guard. I saw him ironing his uniform, getting up, leaving for work. The majority of the time he spent going whatever. But he always talked to us about training that he had. He taught us some martial arts and how to defend ourselves and stuff like that. So I remember just shaking him, and my dad like jumped up, startled, like he was ready to fight. So he balled his fist up and kind of cocked back, and he caught himself, and then he like instantly everything shifted from kind of this fight or flight response, or at least like aggressive or even defensive stance, whatever it was, like he was ready to fight. And then immediately, once he saw it was me, just shifted to like, I wouldn't hit you. And then he even said to me that, you know, I'm lucky that it was me, because if it was Devin, he probably would have hit him. Now, Devin is 4 years older than me, so especially at that age, the difference between a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old boy as far as stature is significant. So I don't know if that was the reason behind it, but how I always took it was like, yo, that's messed up on one hand, because Devin is still his son. But then also that, at least in some sense, to my dad, I was special. So that was something that was instilled in me and established by my dad very early on, and maintained throughout my life. We had plenty of conversations about just the fact that I was his namesake, and he felt like that I was supposed to be, because I'm not the oldest. Devin is the oldest, so if it was a junior, it should have been Devin. But me being the youngest and being a junior is weird to a lot of people. But my dad always stood on, nah, like, you was the one that's supposed to be a junior. And I felt like I got the best version of my dad and the best version of my mom, whatever that was, and whatever the difference was between parenting and maturity and development and all of that stuff. So with that being said, that's one story. And then the other one is a little bit different, and this kind of set the tone for the vast majority of the disappointment, because it was said, but it wasn't lived up to. So it had the opposite effect, right? I was told that I was important enough to create this desire to change, but then when the change didn't happen, then I guess to me, then that meant I wasn't that important. So this is the story. I remember getting around the same age, 5 or 6. I asked my dad to buy me some shoes. Now, this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, and it wasn't expensive, and it wasn't like, I wasn't trying to impress anybody or whatever. It was just some shoes that I liked and I wanted. They was Jordache. I don't even know if a lot of people even heard it or that brand still exists, but it was some Jordache shoes that was probably about, here we go on my back again, it's probably about $20-$30. And my dad told me that he didn't have the money. So me being a 5 or 6 year old kid, of course, knowing that he just got paid, because I was old enough to understand when payday was. That's why I waited till after payday to ask for the shoes. And he telling me he don't have the money, and it's literally like he just got paid. So I asked him, once he said he didn't have the money, like, didn't you just get paid? Innocent question. And he said that made him think. And that was the catalyst for him realizing how bad his drug abuse problem was, and that it was the catalyst for him to change. Now, in the conversation that, again, I asked him, and he told me he had no money. Say he just got, why he had no money if he just got paid. He didn't give me an explanation in the moment, but I guess he went and thought about it, and ultimately, within a few days, we had this scenario, this situation where my dad woke everybody in the house up in the middle of the night. And took us in the kitchen / dining room because we lived in a double wide trailer on a trailer park, and we ate in the kitchen. It was enough space. We had a dining room table in there, but the kitchen and dining room was basically in the same area. He took us in there and did his confession or explanation, whatever you want to call it, about him using drugs, which I didn't have a concept of what drugs were or what that meant. So my dad put a crack pipe on our dining room table and did his confession that the reason he wasn't present, the reason he was doing a lot of stuff that he was doing, the reason he wasn't doing a lot of stuff that he was supposed to be doing, and ultimately, the reason that he didn't have no money was because he had been doing drugs, and he was gonna stop, shattered the crack pipe. And again, at the time, I ain't realizing the significance, and it's the middle of the night, I'm tired. So it's just like, he woke us up to tell us he doing drugs, and then he broke some glass, and now, we gotta clean up and go to bed. But sitting here at 42, understanding, what that was, and I do believe it was his desire to stop. But as a kid, two things are going on. One, I've pretty much been conditioned to believe that because I am Clarence Young Jr., I am special, and that it's not by chance. That's what it's supposed to be, because I'm supposed to be the evolution in the next and best version of my dad. And because I am so important, and because I asked my dad to buy me some shoes, and he had to kind of come face to face with the realization that because he was doing drugs, he wasn't really upholding his responsibility as a father, I was important enough to be the catalyst or inspiration for him to turn his life around. That's big. But then when he didn't do it, then now what does that mean? So if somebody basically tell you you're important, you're so important to me that I'm going to do this, and then they don't do it to a kid, then that, I guess that, and again, I can't say that throughout my childhood I felt or like mindfully thought about this, but I'm speculating or reflecting about my childhood as an adult, and this is how I feel about the situation. It made me feel like I wasn't that important. It made me feel like drugs and alcohol and cigarettes were more important to me, and it made me grow to resent those things, and resent my dad because he told me something that now he's showing me was not true, and continued to show me was not true the vast majority of my childhood and young adulthood into adulthood. And in all honesty, he never changed, but I changed to where I didn't take it personal, or see it as a reflection of my importance or anything about me versus just a problem that my dad had. But as a kid, I did take that as those things were more important to me, and therefore I wasn't that important. So obviously that caused a lot of strain, tension, resentment in my relationship with my dad. So my dad was still actively trying to parent. I remember a lot of conversations, a lot of explanations, a lot of things that my dad did that maybe I didn't do as well as he did. Because I've mentioned before, I don't ever remember my dad snapping on me or yelling at me. And I know I've done those things with my kids. Now, what I do remember is him being willing to explain anything to us if we ask him a question. So I've tried to continue to do that. I've tried to be a father that would have the hard conversations with my kids and be open and honest with my kids. But I also came up short when it comes to delivery. So that's stuff I continue to work on and be challenged with to this day. But, you know, the older I get, the more I can appreciate all of those lessons that my dad did give me, and kind of realize the value of some of the things that I couldn't see through the negativity, through the frustration, through the pain, through the resentment, through the negativity and the emotion that I felt, that I couldn't take the good out of it, even though, or I couldn't identify the good in it, even though it was there. It was so drastically overshadowed by the bad. And I feel like that's the same thing that's going on right now with me and my kids. So even though I had the desire to do better, my dad told me a lot that I was a much better parent than him. And I believed I was a much better parent than him. But as far as the outcomes, you know, the kids will really be the people that be the judge of, you know, their opinion of me as a father. And with the older kids, I know it's a lot more negative contributions that I had, or negative, you know, I don't even know what to call it. But they went through a lot of stuff. So I do still have a desire to balance it out and hopefully turn the tables to where when it's all said and done, it's a lot more good than bad. But at this point, I feel like they feel like it's a lot more bad than good. And I don't necessarily believe that that's true, but I do understand how they can believe it's true, because I can see in myself how for a very long time, I couldn't see any of the good from my dad. I could only see the bad because the bad hurt so much. And it wasn't just the drugs and alcohol, it was the constant disappointment. So one of the reasons that I am so consistent in trying to live up to the expectations that I create for myself and do what I tell people I'm gonna do, be a man of my word, is because my dad wasn't. It's so many times that my dad told me he was gonna come pick me up and he didn't come pick me up. It's so many times my dad told me he was gonna do stuff and he didn't do it. So many times my dad told me he was gonna stop smoking. And so many times my dad told me he was gonna stop drinking. And so many times my dad told me he was gonna stop doing drugs. And so many times my dad told me he was gonna get his life together, and he just never did. So I never wanted to be that person. So I do firmly believe that anybody that I've had a close relationship with, even if they don't like me, even if whatever, they can attest to, like, I did what I said I was gonna do. If I told my kids I was gonna do something for them, I did it. If I told them I wasn't gonna do something, then I put the effort into to not do it. So I have, even though I'm not perfect, the way I've communicated with my kids and the interaction with my kids drastically changed based off feedback I got from my kids. Whether they acknowledge it or not, I'm a completely different person. So I have changed, and that's because my dad never changed. So with all of that being said, I'm starting to be able to identify and appreciate the positive more and more as I get older, and the more I experience as a father, being on the other side of it. And I do appreciate it. And I don't know if the word is regret. Maybe it is, but I guess maybe it's more so disappointment. I'm very disappointed that I don't have the opportunity to spend more time with my dad, and my dad doesn't have the opportunity to be around to see Davin, Crystal, and myself develop into the people that we are and the people that we continue to grow to be, and doesn't get to see, you know, RJ running track and Mac playing basketball, and, you know, Sophia doing her dance, and all the kids doing whatever they doing. Like, he don't get to see none of that, but he in some way contributed to all of that through his contribution to who we are as people and as parents. So I really do appreciate my dad more and more the older I get, even though he's not here. And I really can see the value of the good side of the parenting the older I get, even though when I was younger, it was really heavily overshadowed by the negative side. And I don't want to ramble on, but because my dad talked to me, because my dad told me how much he got from me talking to him, because that's one thing my dad openly acknowledged all the time. He used to tell me he learned a lot from me from our conversations all the time. So that always put me in a mindset of listen to my kids. And I've learned so much from a leader, but I was open to that. That was the expectation. And not just from my dad, but my mom too. But this is specifically about my dad. But because my parents openly communicated with me how much, things that I told them shifted their perspective on things and helped them, I was always open to listening to my kids. But unfortunately, the older kids didn't really share a lot with me. They probably talked a lot about me to other people and to each other. And I don't know if I didn't make them feel comfortable sharing with me. Now, I do know I was very dismissive of anybody talking about feelings because of my conditioning. And when I talk about my conditioning, I mean the military. Like, I was taught not to worry about feelings. So that might work in the military, it don't work in real life. So I know that is probably the single biggest factor in what I felt like contributed to me alienating, my wife and kids when I had a family, and cost me my family. So I had to reflect on that and been through a lot of counseling and everything to make those changes. And again, that goes back to I didn't want to be like my dad. And at 42, I know hopefully, God willing, God got a lot more time, and I have more time ahead of me than behind me to make up for these things. But just being open, it mostly was not wanting to be like my dad, because there was so many times I sat in my grandparents' dining room with my grandfather and my dad and just listened to my dad, and me and my grandfather would look at each other like, this dude just will not take accountability. It was always excuses. It was always somebody else's fault. It was whatever else. And even though that probably sounds very negative, it just constantly reinforced, don't do that. Don't be that. And it pissed me off. But it made me not be that. So I do take responsibility for my actions, my bad decisions, and everything else. And not only in acknowledging them or being apologetic, but actually putting work in to make the changes. And direct result of my experience with my dad. And it is making me a better man and continues to make me a better man, and pushes me to become the best version of myself I could possibly be, to set that example for my son. Now, the flip side is, if it didn't happen, how different would things be? Meaning, if my dad wasn't a drug addict, alcoholic, if he wasn't abusive, if I didn't see all of those things and build this negative emotion toward it and this resentment toward him, and in turn those things, would I have been more prone to experiment with drugs? Would I have been more prone to overdo alcohol, to take chances that had I not saw him do those things, would I have potentially done them or been more open to doing them? I can speculate, but I probably feel like I would. But because he did it and the impact that it had on me, I didn't. So that's a blessing in itself, that because my dad was those things, I never became those things. So even though those things were negative, the impact of those things were positive in my adult life, just as positive in my adult life as they were negative in my childhood. And it always kind of circles back to my faith. And I'm not big on quoting things verbatim, but the gist of things, like, I like to understand, and that kind of reinforces to me that everything is for my benefit, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, everything that I've gone through, everything I've experienced, ultimately end up being for my benefit, whether it was negative or whether it hurt me or not. And a lot of those things happen with my dad. A lot of the lessons came from my dad. And again, good, bad, or ugly, on a daily basis, I see his influence in my life, and I'm thankful for it. So I know I'm gonna talk about my dad more. I just want to make this too long. So yeah, Clarence Young Sr. Wherever you are, if there's a heaven, you know, if there's an afterlife, if you can hear me, thank you. I appreciate you. I do have a desire to continue and improve your legacy, and contribute to the progression of the Young name, the Young line. Hopefully influence and invest in the next generation being better than this generation, and putting the family in a different position, because the position we in now, I used to get so mad for you trying to take credit, but now I realize, even if I didn't see it, you were right. And you were right to be just as proud of your positive contributions. You were right to be just as proud of the sacrifices you made to put us in position to have the opportunities that we had and become the people that we became. Just as much as you should have been disappointed and embarrassed and frustrated about the shortcomings, one doesn't cancel the other. So I don't know how. I know you had some regrets, and I know that you came up short in a lot of senses, but I also know I probably didn't give you your flowers while you were here, and it's too late to tell you to your face, but it's still not too late to acknowledge it, and it's not too late to share that with my kids. You should have been proud of the positive that you contributed to our lives, and I'm thankful for the positive that you contributed to our lives, and I appreciate you, and I will always love you, and respect your sacrifice, your investment, and your contribution to the person that I am, the man that I am, the father that I am, and the positions that you put me in to allow those things to happen. I love you. I appreciate you. So yeah, thank you so much for the good and the bad, and hopefully I can turn it into something amazing for our family. So I love you, and I appreciate you. Anybody else who watched this video, appreciate y'all for tuning in. Until next time, Timeshare Clarence. Peace.